In 1910, white mobs in Slocum, Texas murdered up to 200 black residents after rumors spread about black success and land ownership. Survivors fled. No one was punished. No reparations. To this day, most Texans have never heard of it.
The Slocum Massacre was the killing of black residents by whites on July 29–30, 1910, in Slocum, an unincorporated community in Anderson County near Palestine in East Texas. Only 7 deaths were officially confirmed, but some 22 were reported by major newspapers. This is the official count, but it is estimated that as many as 100 African Americans were killed. 1. Historians have offered several explanations for the sparking of the riot and massacre by whites. At the time, rumors placed responsibility on the blacks, saying that whites had armed in response to accounts of blacks planning a race war. The whites from the mob did their best to destroy any local evidence against them. African Americans appealed to higher levels of government for a fair investigation, but little to nothing was done on their behalf. As a result, the African American population in Slocum declined drastically, as many left in fear for their lives. Long before the Slocum Massacre occurred, racial tensions had been part of the state's history. In East Texas, where the majority of blacks had lived since before the American Civil War, enslaved African Americans had been brought by planters and traders to develop and work cotton plantations. Several counties had enslaved black majorities. In the aftermath of the war, whites resented the emancipation and enfranchisement of former slaves. In the post-Reconstruction era, conservative white Democrats regained control of county and state governments, and passed laws at the turn of the century to disenfranchise African Americans. By the turn of the century, there had already been at least 335 lynchings, of which 261 victims were black. Most of these lynchings were based on allegations of whites against blacks. Even though the justice system discriminated against African Americans, most lynching victims never received a trial. Several lynchings of African Americans in Texas had taken place in the time before the Slocum Massacre. 2. African Americans had struggled to gain social equality, as well as economic equality. They were frequently assigned only old, overworked plots for growing crops as tenant farmers or sharecroppers. They kept their farming land to smaller sizes to avoid trouble with jealous whites. The combination of unfruitful land and small farms made blacks more susceptible to falling into debt when they didn't have a good harvest season. Given the turmoil between races, black people felt threatened if they tried to advance economically. The Slocum Massacre was originally said to have been sparked by 2 separate events. First, there was an argument over a promissory note between Marsh Hawley, a black businessman, and Redden Alford, a disabled white farmer. Hawley had not thought it was a serious argument. But whites heard that Hawley was trying to cheat a disabled farmer, or Alford had lied and said that Hawley was threatening him. Secondly, black farmer Abe Wilson was sent to inform people of road maintenance in the area. A white farmer, Jim Spurger, got upset because he thought it was a violation of white supremacy to have a black man helping the community. Again, rumors distorted events. Wilson was rumored to be supervising a white road crew, which upset whites. Sometime after the massacre, some people wondered if Spurger was worried about African Americans flirting with his daughters. 2. Another reported cause of the Slocum Massacre was the defeat of James J. Jeffries, a white boxer, by Jack Johnson, a black boxer, in what was billed as the fight of the century. Resentful whites caused more than one race riot in 1910 after Jeffries' defeat. 4. Though these stories most likely contributed to the Slocum Massacre, locally white people in Anderson County believed rumors that a black uprising was being planned in retaliation for the recent lynching of a black man in the area. Whites put out a call to white men from nearby counties to come to their aid. As a precaution, the whites hid their women and children in schools and churches before setting out to hunt down blacks. White men stocked up on guns and ammunition and drank alcohol. District Judge Benjamin Howard Gardner realized that the combination of alcohol, guns, and rumors about black uprisings could create a dangerous and potentially deadly outcome. Before the bloodshed began, he tried to counteract it by imposing a court order that closed all saloons, gun stores, and hardware stores, but he was too late. White men involved in the massacre had already obtained their weapons. The violence began on July 29, when 6 white men confronted a group of black teenagers. Most of the teenagers escaped, but one was murdered by the mob. Soon after, mobs of up to 50 white men were formed throughout Anderson County. These groups raided black neighborhoods and attempted to kill any black person they encountered. Some mobs shot African Americans as they tried to flee through the forest. The Slocum Massacre lasted through the night, for a total of 16 hours. Though only 5 casualties were confirmed, the casualty amount was likely much higher. Sheriff William H. Black said that men were going about killing Negroes as fast as they could find them, and, so far as I was able to ascertain, without any real cause. He also described it as, there was just a hot-headed gang hunting them down and killing them. They were just hunting the Negroes down like sheep. After the bloodshed ended, Sheriff Black and Sheriff Lacey from the surrounding area arrived in Anderson County to address and investigate the killings of African Americans. When they arrived, they said everyone was afraid, and all white males were armed. Sheriff Black and Godfrey Reese Fowler went to the scene to complete a thorough investigation of the events. Sheriff Black ruled that whites did not have a legitimate reason to kill since whites attacked even when the blacks did not. Deputy Sheriff Stubblefield was also called to the scene. Whites in Anderson County warned him of a threat of assassination by an African American. This shows that whites were still fearful and willing to kill. Because of the fear in both the white and black population, Governor Thomas Mitchell Campbell ordered Texas Rangers and the state militia to Anderson County. The Texas Rangers began their work by helping black women and children. On their search, black neighborhoods were empty. Blacks' property was frequently stolen. Ambiguous, the Rangers confirmed that black people believed that white people were hunting them. Even with the rumor of a black uprising against whites proven false, Marsh Hawley, a witness to murders and one of the reasons that the Slocum Massacre began in the first place, was put in jail as protection. He denied that the promissory note was the cause of the massacre. It was said that the burial site of African Americans was on Abe Wilson's land. Some say that there were 6 deaths total, and the deceased were wrapped in blankets, put in pine boxes, and buried in a trench. Others say that bodies were thrown in the ditch. Others reported seeing bodies abandoned in woods, fields, and cane breaks. The final death toll was never determined. But by the 1920 census, at least 1/2 of the black population had left Slocum. Black resident Jack Hawley survived the massacre. He fled the area with his family. He left the granary, dairy, and general store that he had built up as a freedman. Other Hawley family survivors included Willustus Lusk Hawley, who witnessed his brother, Alex, being murdered. He escaped by playing dead and soon moved to Fort Worth. Reagan and Marshall Hawley stayed in Anderson County for the rest of their lives. Besides the Hawleys, 7 other men who died in the massacre were Cleveland, Cleve, Larkin, Sam Baker, Dick and Jeff Wilson, Ben Dancer, John Hayes, and Will Burley. During the early 1900s, indictments and prosecutions tended to side with white mobs when it came to crimes against African Americans. Anderson County District Court Judge Benjamin H. Gardner released a statement that said that law enforcement would start turning away and shooting to kill, if necessary, those who sympathized with the mobs or participated in them. He also said that he would no longer tolerate law enforcement officers who favored the mobs. Gardner called a grand jury to identify suspects in the case and intended to prosecute men indicted as a result. 2. After investigations and arrests began, Texas Rangers arrested Josh Bishop, Isom Garner, and Walter Ferguson. Anderson County Deputy Sheriff Riley Reeves arrested Jim Spurger, who was involved in one of the initial conflicts. G. W. Bailey, Morgan Henry, Frank Bridge, Andrew Kirkwood, and B.J. Jenkins were arrested as well. Despite the investigations and arrests, law enforcement was unable to conclude how many people had died at the hands of the mobs. Judge Gardner knew that whites would have the majority even if a crime was committed, so he asked the jurors to excuse themselves if it was impossible to complete a fair trial. On August 5, SC. Jenkins was arrested, and Ferguson and Bishop were released. On August 14, Lusk Hawley and Charlie Wilson were summoned as witnesses, and Curtis Sperger, Jim Sperger's brother, was arrested. On August 17, the murder charges were released. No indictments were made for the murders of Alex Hawley or John H. Hay, or the attempted murders of Charlie Wilson and Lusk Hawley. Of the indictments, 2 cases moved forward, but they did not make it to court. By the time the cases were ready for trial, Judge Gardner had been replaced. The new judge released all suspects for $1,500 bail. Gardner still wanted these men behind bars. He knew they were dangerous because he encountered Jim Sperger in Kirkwood in public. Sperger hit him in the face, and Gardner had to pull a pistol on Kirkwood. His desire for justice was never fulfilled. Both Sperger and Kirkwood remained free for the rest of their lives.